Let's get to know Pacers lottery pick Jarace Walker a little bit better by talking to those who saw him develop in high school. We'll connect with Brian Nash today on Locked On Pacers, the director of basketball at IMG Academy, where Walker spent some of his high school days. It's all coming on today's Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and SI, and today, really fun episode getting to know more about Jarace Walker, the Pacers' new lottery pick forward, how he can help this team, his growth as a person and player, all sorts of things about his background, and who better than someone who watched him go from a younger player all the way to the NBA. Brian Nash, the director of basketball. What a cool job title at IMG Academy, where Walker spent much of his high school playing days. Nash oversees the entire basketball program at IMG Academy down in Florida, where Walker played and grew from part point guard, part forward to center to forward again, and then went to Houston before the NBA. All sorts of fascinating things involved for Walker in his career. And Nash has a ton of insight about his background, his growth as a player at multiple positions. We get into all of it today in this wide-ranging interview, which was on the phone, so I apologize for the audio differences for normal. Let's just get right to it. So when did Jarace Walker first pop up on your radar?
So he had, he was like the number one eighth grader in the country, and there was, again, I think from his family standpoint, they were looking to, get away from, I think he was looking to get away from home and try to get to, an elite high school program and not go to kind of a local school. And there was an AAU connection with our coaching staff, and that's kind of how it started. He came down and visited, and obviously, when you get down here, there's a lot to fall in love with the facilities and being in Florida and all those things, and that was kind of the starting point.
On the flip side of that, he gets there and already looks fantastic, getting tons of D1 opportunities. When did you realize that he kind of had it, like he could be that level of player that could be on an NBA path one day? The number one eighth grader in the country, like what exactly does that mean, right? I mean, there's so much time ahead of you for developing. But I mean, the one thing that he had right away was, he looked like Larry Johnson. That's what we used to, that's what we referred to him when he came in here. I mean, how many kids that young had that much size? And I would say, that first year that he played on, he played on a team that had like three other NBA players on it, and he had to work extremely hard. He had to put in his time. There were a lot of ups and downs, and I would say like the national semifinal that year in the Geico Championships, we were playing Montverde, and Montverde had like 5 pros on their team. I think it was Cade Cunningham, it was Scotty Barnes, it was Malik Monk, and they were loaded, and we were down 18 points in the second half. We came back, and he had like one of the most impactful plays in the game. He got an offensive rebound on a missed free throw that we had. Had a great swim stroke move, got around, got the rebound, kicked it out, and then hit a big three at that point, and it was like a big momentum swing. And I don't know, that play always stands out to me. Like, okay, this kid's got a chance to be pretty special. On the more personal side of you getting to know these athletes and seeing them every day, what stood out to you about who Jarace Walker is as a person, or do you have an interaction with him that like remains in your head as like this is like the ultimate Jarace Walker interaction?
I just think the one thing I've been saying to people is, he comes from incredible stock. His mom and dad are just the most amazing parents and did a phenomenal job raising him, and he is the most well-mannered, well-spoken, considerate. I wouldn't say any one moment is consistent, but I would think just the overall body of work. I think he was just consistent in everything that he did. He was respectful. we have an academy here where we have sixth graders all the way up to postgrads, and he always was there to talk to the younger kids. He didn't big time anybody, and he just got a nice way about himself.
A lot of players in your program are moving away from home for the first time, and I feel like that adjustment can be hard. And how did you see Walker handle that? And that's a big thing for all these players, because they end up moving to college and then to the pros. And do you feel like that's a translatable skill they learn with you guys?
I think it definitely helps being away. I mean, and learning a schedule. I mean, this place is not that easy because the schedules are so regimented, and we do have a strict, we've got a lot of strict policies around here for a boarding school. I mean, the kids don't have as much freedom to come and go as they want. So they've got to learn to operate within a lot of structure right away. So I think from a time management side and the demands of what the practices are, then transitioning and going to class and making sure you got to get your work done. I think this place, over the years, I mean, all of the college coaches have always said that our kids are more prepared for college because they're in more of a college routine and a college schedule earlier on. And then, I think the one story that's kind of that floats around there about Jarace was, I mean, it was about the first 3 or 4 weeks of his freshman year into school. And I don't know 100% whether it was, I remember something minor happened in the dorms, like something goofy, like being a 14, 15-year-old kid in the dorms. And then the other one that people are talking about, maybe he overslept for a class or something. And his dad called our head coach, I remember, and it was like, hey, you know what? I don't know if this is the place for my son, because my son doesn't act like this. Like, this is not in his character. So I don't know whether that was, a ploy by dad at that time to really tell Jarace that, you know what? This can all be taken away from you pretty quick from dad if you don't do what you're supposed to do. But again, I think that goes back to his upbringing and why he is the way he is, because he had parents that really held him accountable and loved him.
Speaking of his parents, I was reading that his mom thought his hands were unusually big at birth, like immediately in his life. And then, when I met him, obviously last week, I noticed his frame. General manager of the Pacers, Chad Buchanan, described him as a linebacker. As you deal with basketball players, like, how unique to you was his frame, and in what ways when he plays do you feel like he uses that to his advantage?
Yeah, so I think he's learned to be almost the biggest guy, the biggest, strongest guy on the court most of the time that he's played. As he's gotten older, there are going to be guys that are taller than him, but as physically strong, I don't think there are that many. He's embraced the reason he got drafted. I think a lot of players, they always want to be something that they're not. And I think Jarace kind of over time has really kind of known what the best version of himself is. And I think that's kind of like the separating factor between players that are really successful and ones that just kind of don't pan out. The ones that don't pan out want to keep doing things that they can't do. And I think Jarace understands that, I'm a great defender. I'm a great rebounder. My offensive game is still evolving, but I'm a good enough player. So, and he buys into that. And you know what? He affects winning and doing whatever happens or whatever he needs to do for the team to win is how he operates. So, I mean, when you put all those things together, I mean, you've got a lottery pick,
Hey guys, short little break here so I can talk to you about eBay Motors. For a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay's guaranteed fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check to know a part will fit, or you'll get your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million, that's a lot, parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay guaranteed fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Maybe all that stuff you just said would be your answer to this question, but how do you feel like you saw him grow with you guys at IMG, and what is it kind of can that growth do for him and others in the pro level?
Yeah, so freshman year came in and like I said, really competitive. I mean, he's played with multiple NBA guys on his teams every year that he's been here. So freshman year, you got the seniors and the juniors, and you're not trying to rock the boat, and you're doing what you got to do, what the coach wants to get on the floor. Sophomore year, he starts to kind of get in the mold of what I just explained was, all right, hey, I'm going to expand my game a little bit more. I want to become a perimeter shooter. I want to be a ball handler a little bit more. And, honestly, his junior and senior year, he struggled a little bit because I think he was so, caught up in trying to expand his game out and becoming a perimeter player and kind of lost what he was. And then senior year, I mean, we needed him we didn't have a lot of height, and we needed him to play the 5 for us to be the best team that we could be because of who else was on the floor. And he embraced it. He got back to playing physical, still put him in opportunities to work and improve on his perimeter shooting and picking pops and trailing and those things. But he really got back to, understanding. And again, it's a credit to him because it was all about winning again. It was like, hey, coach, what do you need me to do to be successful in my senior year?
He's had an interesting background positionally, right? Because all the 4 at Houston and with you guys at times, and Buchanan was talking about this at his introductory presser. He was playing the 1, right? I've seen clips of him with you guys running pick and rolls as the ball handler, but at the same time doing stuff at the 5 that final year. What do you like? Is there a position you feel like in the? Obviously, I think he'll play the 4 the most, but can he kind of play any spot to you in the pros? Like, where do you feel like naturally he'll shift as his game progresses?
Yeah, we definitely, he played some point forward for us, and when teams try to deny or take our point guard out of the play, he was able to initiate offense. But to your point, I think you can play through him because of the things that he's done. I mean, he's a good ball handler. He's not going to turn it over. I think he knows not to take risks. If you're going to put him in certain positions on the floor, whether it be the high post or the pinch post or the elbows, where you're going to play through him as a passer or a driver. I think he's capable of doing that because he's got a good IQ and he makes good decisions. So. Again, I think you hear the defense and the rebounding thing. I mean, offensively, he's still going to keep evolving, and he's got a really good skill set. So I think we're going to see more improvement from him on the offensive side than we are on the defensive side. Which, if you're with a team, that's obviously a good thing.
Looking at the Pacers with Miles Turner, Tyrese Haliburton, Benedict Mathurin, how do you feel like he fits with that group, and where do you think he can elevate what they already do?
Yeah, no, I mean it's a super talented young core. I don't get to see the Pacers play as much being down here in Florida, but I mean knowing those players and just I think how they played this past year and the excitement of throwing Jarace into the mix, I think he fits really good with those players. I mean, you've got the shot blocker, rebounder, dunker in Miles Turner, and then those 2 guards are as good as you can get. So, then you throw him in the power forward position, and I think it's a really good mix.
Does your approach change on the player development side with prospects at all when you realize there can be kind of a defensive prospect? Since, you mentioned earlier, a lot of guys kind of want to be the star of the show, the ball handler. With a guy like Jarace, who's known for his defense, is there any way you push them to be that? How do you kind of develop defense in a different way with guys?
Our Sean Macklin, who coaches our national team, is a defensive-minded coach. He does a really good job with scheme and scouting. So our players kind of have to buy into the defensive side of the ball. They've got to know how to play ball screens and different coverages. They've got to know rotations. So I think that really helps us. From the in-season phase of learning how to play within the team dynamic. And, the unique thing about our academy here is that we go from the end of August all the way to the end of May. It's not like we just have traditional seasons and then we stop playing. We train the entire year. So we have different phases of the year where we can work on different skill sets. I mean, preseason, postseason, with individual development plans and those things and the things that we really want to focus on outside of season, we can do that. And then, we're able to, I mean, we want to have kids that want to impact winning and that want to buy into winning the national championship. And, those are the kids that we've been lucky enough to have.
I don't know how much communication you've had with him since he was with IMG, but in what ways have you seen him grow as a player and as a person since his time there?
The cool thing is that he got to come back down here for, probably about 10 days before the draft to kind of finish out his workouts on campus down here. His mom, his dad came down and, his trainer. So we got to spend some good time with him, just being around him every day and, his maturity level. I think, again, Coach Sampson and Houston did a great job with helping him continue to become a man. And he got thrown into, a different environment at that level where you're competing against men, and your accountability and how hard you have to perform every day is taken to another level. But, the good thing about coming back here, he was Jarace. He was the same soft-spoken person. He was, it was great for him to see administrators and people around here. He did some interviews for us, and, our marketing team said, my God, they were the best interviews anybody's ever done. So he's just, that is the one thing that our kids do get a lot of prep on here too, because they have cameras in front of them so much, because of, the IMG Academy brand and how we promote our national teams. So, it was just, it felt like old times. I mean, it was great to see Mom and Dad and Jarace. And again, we're all just so happy for the family.
People love to point to the college percentage. I'm curious, as someone who's seen him in practice settings in several games, what you think of his jump shot and how it will translate to the pros.
I mean, he's worked on it. It's, he used to have a lot more movement in his shot, and it's tightened up. It's more of a one-piece shot. And, he spent a lot of time shooting when he was here on campus in the remaining days, going into the draft. He's going to be a capable shooter. I mean, you're going to have to guard him because he's going to be able to make shots. And, one thing I know about him is that he'll keep working. With his improved form, I think his percentages will only get better. I mean, it's not like he's ever going to be I don't think he's going to be, a high 40% shooter. But again, he's going to be a guy that he's going to keep you honest, and you're going to have to guard him out there, which is going to set up his driving game, which is really, really effective.
I don't know how well you know Rick Carlisle, but he loves the relationship side of young players, getting to know them and finding the best way for them to kind of succeed and fit in on an NBA court. In what ways do you feel like Jarace is that way as a player in terms of the relationships being important to him, and how do you feel like those two will pair together?
I was reading one of the articles where I know they were in the car listening to jazz music together.
That's right.
I think that was a pretty cool moment. But no, Jarace is, he's a people person. He's a good communicator. He was a kid that lived in the gym, so I think there's always going to be opportunities for those coach moments or coaching staff moments when you're always in there. I think it's harder to build the relationships when somebody's in and out the door. He's invested, and I think that he's going to, he'll embrace all the relationships because he's a great teammate. And again, I think that ends up being, one of his strongest suits is, the teammates are going to respect him because of the person he is, how hard he works, and, he's going to put everything into the team.
This is a fairly vague question, so take it however you want, but do you have any predictions for his NBA career or where you feel like it will go?
I think these things are so hard, but I mean, I know he's going to play in the league for a long time. I mean, I would be super surprised if he's not an NBA journeyman. And, I think you and I both know that the league is made up of a lot of role players who do their jobs really well. And I think his DNA of understanding what he is and whatever role he needs to do, he's not going to fight it. He's going to embrace it. So to me, that's going to just increase his longevity in the league.
Hope you guys enjoyed that conversation with Brian. Learned a lot about Jarace Walker, his growth, his development, and quite frankly, what he could be in the NBA, knowing how many positions he truly played at the high school level. This week now, the rest of the week, it's all free agency, baby. A little bit on Tyrese Halliburton's extension yesterday. If you missed that episode with Yossi Goslin, it was excellent. And then tomorrow, we'll talk about all the rumors we've heard so far, from Grant Williams to Harrison Barnes to DeAndre Hunter and more. We'll get to all those. Then Friday, Rhett Bauer's going to join us to talk free agency, all the storylines, all the player names to watch, the cap situation, everything. It's all coming this week on the Locked On Pacers podcast. Thank you guys for listening so much. If you're an everydayer, thanks a ton. Hope you've enjoyed this week of content from the draft up through free agency. Everybody have a fantastic day. We'll see you tomorrow.